The galaxy was watching. From the icy moons of Thralos to the floating cities of Earth, screens flickered with a single image, the great ceremonial arena of Valthara Prime. Built into the cliffs of a violet mountain range, the arena shone like a crown. At its center stood two figures, small against the wide marble platform but large in meaning. Commander Elias Vane of Earth stepped forward, the bright sun of a distant red star casting his shadow long behind him. He was not the tallest man, nor the strongest. His short brown hair was cut in military style. His uniform was simple, a navy blue coat with the silver eagle of Earth stitched over the heart. His hands, rough and scarred, were held behind his back. He did not carry a weapon. Across from him stood Arana Veth, warrior priestess of the spear-born dominion. She wore silver armor that gleamed like polished ice. Her skin was golden, her long dark hair braided with blue crystals. In her right hand, she held her people's sacred weapon, the Veil Spear, a long staff tipped with a curved, glowing blade. To the spear-born, this was not just a ceremony. It was a test of spirit, a tradition passed down for thousands of years. Only those who could endure the trial of stars, their harshest challenge, were considered worthy allies, and now humanity had been summoned. The ruling council of the galaxy had doubts. Earth had joined the galactic community only 20 years ago. Humans were known for their emotions, their strange love of risk and their unpredictable choices. Some found them fascinating. Others thought they were dangerous. So the Spearborn gave Earth a chance to prove itself, but only one chance. Commander Vane had been chosen, not because he was a politician or a diplomat, but because he had lived through war, hardship, and loss, and never gave up. To his people, he was a quiet hero. To the galaxy, he was still a question mark. A deep voice echoed across the arena. The trial of stars shall begin. The crowd grew silent. Elias stepped forward. Arana mirrored him. She spoke first, her voice calm and smooth. "Do you understand the meaning of this trial, Commander?" Elias nodded. "Yes. To stand before you and not fall. To be tested, not in muscle, but in spirit." She tilted her head slightly, almost surprised. "Your words are wiser than expected." "I read the instructions twice," Elias said with a faint smile. Some in the crowd chuckled softly. Even Arana allowed herself a small smile, but only for a moment. She raised her spear and the first test began. The test was not a fight. Not yet. It was a journey through memory and challenge. A test of endurance, not violence. In the first phase, Elias stood inside a memory field, a holographic zone that pulled from his own past. He saw the ruins of a burning city. The sound of screams echoed around him. It was a simulation of a battle he had lived through, the siege of New Leningrad. But this time he was alone, no soldiers, no help. He walked through the memory, every step reminding him of pain. Yet he kept moving forward. His knees hurt. His chest felt tight. But his eyes remained clear. Outside the simulation, Arana watched closely. "He is not ignoring the pain," she said to herself. "He is walking through it." In the second phase, Elias stood in the circle of judgment. 5 council members of the Spearborn questioned him before the audience. One asked, "Why did your people pollute your own world?" Another said, "Why do you fight so often with your own kind?" A third whispered, "Why do you hope so much when you have suffered so greatly?" Elias did not become angry. He did not try to defend every mistake. He stood with both hands on the railing and said simply, "We are not perfect, but we learn, and we try again. That is what makes us human." There was silence. Then one of the Spearborn nodded slowly. The third phase was a test of balance and focus. Elias had to cross a narrow beam over a pit of energy wind. The beam shifted with every step. The wind howled like ghosts. He moved slowly, sweat rolling down his face. Halfway across, the beam jerked violently. He stumbled. The audience gasped. But Elias dropped to his hands and knees, breathing hard, and pulled himself across. When he reached the other side, Arana met him. She offered a towel, her expression unreadable. "You could have fallen." "I've fallen before," Elias said. "It teaches you how to get up." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded once. That night, Elias sat in his chamber. His body ached. He pressed a cool cloth to his shoulder. Outside, he could hear the sound of the wind on the cliffs. Small screen lit up beside him. A message from Earth. His younger sister's voice came through. "We believe in you. Not because you're perfect, but because you always try. That's what matters." He stared at the screen for a while after it ended. Arana stood in her own chamber, staring at the stars. She thought of her people's history, full of warriors, perfect in form, trained from birth. Yet none had ever taken the trial of stars alone. Elias Vane had done it without armor, without a weapon, only with hope and heart. She wondered, was strength truly only found in power? Or could it be found in pain endured and in dreams not given up? Tomorrow was the final test, and Arana would be the one to deliver it. The galaxy waited, and humanity stood ready. The sun rose slowly over the cliffs of Viewership Prime, casting golden light across the great ceremonial arena. Birds with silver wings flew in wide circles above, singing high-pitched melodies that echoed through the air. The trial of stars had reached its second day, and already the galaxy was talking. Every news screen, every space station, every ship in the stars showed one face: Commander Elias Vane, the human who refused to quit. Inside the waiting chamber, beneath the arena, Elias sat alone. His eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. He was remembering. The tests from yesterday had pushed him to his limit. His ribs still hurt from crawling across the balance beam. His thoughts were heavy with the voices from the circle of judgment, but something inside him was steady. He was here for more than himself. He was here to speak for Earth, for all of humanity. He wanted to show the galaxy that people could rise, even after falling again and again. The door opened with a soft chime. Arana Veth entered. She no longer wore her silver armor. Today, she wore the ceremonial robes of a judge, long and flowing, marked with blue and gold. The vile spear rested in her hand, but its blade was not glowing. It was at rest, like her expression. "You may walk with me to the arena," she said. Elias nodded and stood. His steps were slower today. Each movement took effort. Still, he walked with his head high. As they walked down the long hall toward the open air, Arana spoke. "Yesterday you were judged with questions. Today you will face the trial of beliefs." Elias gave a small smile. "Sounds like another tough day." Arana glanced at him. "Do all humans joke when they are afraid?" "Not all," Elias said. "Just the ones who want to keep going." She didn't smile this time, but her voice was softer when she spoke next. "You have surprised many." "I didn't come to impress," Elias said. "I came to tell the truth, even if it's hard to hear." They stepped into the arena together. The crowd was silent again. Even the wind seemed to pause. The second trial was not physical. It was a battle of words, symbols, and meaning. A wide platform rose from the center of the arena. On it stood 5 large pillars, each marked with ancient galactic symbols: power, honor, unity, wisdom, and sacrifice. One by one, Elias and Arana would take turns standing before a pillar and speak what the symbol meant to their people. The trial was not to win, it was to understand. A deep voice echoed once more. "Let the trial of beliefs begin." Arana stepped forward to the first pillar, power. To the spearborn, she said, "Power is the shield that protects peace. We do not use it to rule. We use it to preserve balance. Without strength, there can be no order." The crowd murmured in agreement. Elias stepped forward. He looked at the pillar, then at the crowd. To humans, power is dangerous, he said. We have misused it many times. But we also learned something important. True power is not in control over others. It is in control over ourselves. Some listeners frowned. Others leaned in. The next pillar was honor. Arana raised her chin. Honor is the soul of the spearborn. We are taught from childhood to follow the path of discipline, truth, and tradition. Without honor, our strength is hollow. Elias nodded slowly. Honor matters to us too. But we often find it when we fall short. We learn it when we say sorry, when we admit failure, and when we choose to keep trying even after we break. Now the murmurs grew louder. The messages were different, but both were sincere. They continued through each pillar. At Unity, Arana spoke of her people's shared mission, their deep respect for common purpose. Elias spoke of Earth's many nations, different and often divided, yet still able to come together in times of need, as they did when first reaching the stars. At Wisdom, Arana described centuries of quiet learning, of meditation and study. Elias shared a story about his old teacher, a mechanic who fixed broken ships but taught him more about life than any book. And then came the last pillar. Sacrifice. Arana turned to face the audience. We honor sacrifice with ceremony. Every warrior knows the meaning of giving up personal comfort for the good of the whole. We remember every name. She placed her spear gently against the base of the pillar, then stepped back. Elias looked at the symbol for a long moment. His voice was low when he spoke. My best friend gave his life to save a family he didn't even know. He didn't wear a uniform, he wasn't trained, but in that moment he chose to help, because he believed every life matters. That's the kind of sacrifice humanity carries. Silence. Deep, heavy silence. And then quietly, one spearborn elder stood and gave a respectful nod. The trial was complete. That night, Arana walked alone through the garden paths of the Sky Temple. She felt something she had not expected. Doubt. Elias had not tried to fight her culture. He had not claimed humans were better. But he had shown something real. A different way of strength. Could both be true? Could softness and effort be as strong as skill and control? Meanwhile, Elias sat by his window looking out at the stars. He didn't know what the council would decide. But inside he felt calm. He had spoken from the heart. He had told their story, not just of pain, but of hope. Just then a soft knock came at his door. It was Arana. She entered slowly, without her spear. She sat across from him, folding her hands neatly. I have known many warriors, she said. But you are not like them. Probably not, Elias said. And yet, I am not sure which of us is stronger. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, she said, Tomorrow is the last day. Elias nodded. Yes. There will be no test of words. No memories, just one act. He looked at her. And you will be the one to perform it? Yes, she said. But not to defeat, to measure. He did not ask what she meant. He only nodded once. Outside, the stars turned slowly. The galaxy waited. And so did the final trial. The morning of the final trial came quietly. There was no music in the air, no loud voices in the sky. The great arena of Viewership Prime stood still under a soft gray sky. Even the stars above seemed to dim, as if watching closely. Commander. Elias Vane sat on the edge of his small bed. He wore a simple white tunic, no armor, no decorations. His hands were folded in his lap, and his eyes were calm. He knew what was coming. No one had explained the last trial in detail. They had only said it would be a test like no other. A test not of strength, nor knowledge, nor endurance, but of spirit. There was a quiet knock at the door. He opened it to find Arana Veth standing there. She wore her ceremonial armor once more, polished silver with blue crystal markings, nigh. Her hand was the Vial spear, glowing again with soft golden light. But her face was not hard. It held something different now. Respect. Are you ready? She asked. Elias stood. His back was still sore. His legs felt heavy. But he nodded. I'm ready. They walked side by side through the long stone hallway toward the light of the arena. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing more to say. When they stepped into the open, the crowd rose to its feet. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching. The final trial was called the Ritual of the Spear. It was an ancient spearborn tradition, used only in the most serious moments. A warrior would face the sacred spear, not to fight, but to receive it. To take the blow, without resistance, without fear. If the one who stood before the spear remained standing, it meant they had a spirit that could not be broken. A heart that would not give up. It was not a fight. It was a choice. At the center of the arena was a raised platform. On it, a circle marked with the ancient words, to endure without anger, to fall without shame, to rise without fear. Elias stepped into the circle. Arana followed him, her footsteps light and sure. A voice echoed from above. A spearborn elder. Let this final trial begin. The spear will speak. The soul will answer. Arana turned to Elias. Her voice was steady, but gentle. You understand what must happen? Elias nodded. You must strike. She looked into his eyes. I will not hold back. I know. You may fall. I've fallen before. You may not rise. Elias smiled faintly. Then I'll stay down with pride. She stepped back. The veil spear began to glow brighter. The audience was silent. Even the wind had paused. Arana raised the spear. She took one deep breath. Then, with both hands, she thrust it forward. Not with hatred, not with violence, but with the full weight of tradition and truth. The spear struck Elias in the chest. The blade did not pierce through. It was designed to test, not kill. But the force was real. His body jerked back. His knees shook. For a moment he looked like he might fall. But he didn't. He held still. His chest rose and fell. His hands clenched at his sides. He stood shaking, with the tip of the spear pressed against his chest, and then softly he spoke. This is what Unbreakable looks like. The words were quiet, but they echoed through the arena like thunder. The glow from the spear faded. Arana slowly lowered her hands. Elias was still standing. The IT audience rose again, but not with cheers. With silent honor. The trial was complete. After the ceremony, Elias lay in the medical bay. He was not injured badly, but the trial had drained all his strength. He rested quietly, his eyes open, looking at the white ceiling. Arana entered without speaking. She placed something beside him, a small piece of blue crystal from her armor. A symbol of deep respect in her culture. Then she sat beside him. You did not have to speak, she said, after the spear touched you. I know, Elias replied. But I wanted to. Why? He looked at her. Because I wasn't standing for myself. I was standing for something bigger. For everyone back home. For everyone who believes that trying again matters. Arana nodded slowly. My people, we have always believed strength means control, stillness, perfection. But you showed me another kind of strength. He smiled. There are many ways to stand tall. She stood, quiet for a long time. Then she said, Tomorrow, the council will vote on Earth? Yes, but after today I believe the answer is already clear. That evening across the galaxy, screens showed a single image, the human who stood before the spear and did not fall. Elders spoke in soft voices about change. Children in far-off worlds drew pictures of Elias Vane. And back on Earth, families held each other and cried with pride. Humanity had not shown power. It had shown something better. The wind had returned to Valthera Prime. It moved softly across the mountaintop city, whispering through crystal towers and around the great arena where billions had watched history unfold. But inside the chamber of the Spearborn Council, there was no wind, no sound, only silence. Commander Elias Vane had completed the trial of stars. He had stood without armor. He had spoken with honesty. And finally he had taken the spear to the chest and stayed on his feet. Now, the final decision rested with the leaders of the galaxy. The chamber was wide and open, filled with light from the stars above. Floating between tall stone pillars were the members of the High Council, each from a different world, a different species, a different history. Arana Veth stood alone at the center. "The human has passed the final trial," she said. Her voice was calm but strong. He stood not for himself but for his people. He did not answer the spear with violence but with courage. A tall elder from the ice world of Taldros spoke next. "He is not like us. He does not come from peace." "No," Arana said. "He comes from struggle. That is what makes his strength real." Another council member, shaped like a tree with glowing roots, leaned forward. "And if we accept his people into full alliance, what will they bring?" Arana answered without pause. "Hope, and the will to rise again." A silence passed. Then one by one the council members pressed their marks of decision. The results appeared in the air above them. A glowing circle of light. Humanity. Accepted. Cheers broke across the capital. The message was sent instantly across the stars. On Earth, people danced in the streets. On the moon colonies, children waved homemade flags. Ships in deep space blinked their lights in celebration. But Elias Vane did not see it. He was no longer in the chamber. Far below the city, in a quiet medical room, Elias lay unconscious. The spear's strike, though ceremonial, had taken all his strength. His body had reached its limit. After the trial ended, he had taken 3 more steps and then collapsed. Doctors had rushed in. He was breathing, but weak. His heartbeat was steady, but slow. Now he slept. As the galaxy changed because of him, Arana sat beside his bed. She wore no armor now. Her robes were simple, her spear laid beside the wall. She looked at the man who had done something no one in her people's long history had dared. Stand unguarded before the veil spear, and not fall, not because he was the strongest, not because he was trained since childhood, but because he believed in something greater than himself. She touched the edge of his blanket. "You made us see," she whispered, "not just who you are, but who we could be." Just then, a soft beep came from the room's corner. A screen lit up, showing a call from Earth's ambassador, waiting outside. Arana stood, gave Elias one last look, and left to speak with the rest of the council. Hours passed. Then slowly, Elias's fingers moved. His eyes opened. The room was quiet, white, filled with the smell of healing herbs and humming machines. He sat up, blinking. For a moment, he wasn't sure where he was. Then the door opened. A young medical worker stepped in, eyes wide with surprise. "You're awake," she said, smiling. "Looks like it," Elias said, his voice rough. She hurried to call the doctors. Within minutes, Arana returned with the head physician. But when she saw Elias awake and sitting upright, she paused in the doorway. He looked at her and gave a tired smile. "Did I pass?" Arana stepped closer. "You did more than pass. You didn't hit that hard," he joked. She raised an eyebrow. "Your body disagrees." He laughed softly, then winced. "I didn't mean to collapse. I wanted to stay standing." "You did," she said. "Long enough." Elias looked down at his chest. A soft bandage covered the area where the spear had touched. There was no scar, but he could still feel the pressure there. Not pain, but memory. "Is it official?" he asked. Arana nodded. The council voted. Earth is now fully part of the Galactic Union. Elias closed his eyes and let out a long breath. Good. I didn't come this far for nothing. She smiled. You came farther than most have ever dared. The next day, the ceremony of acceptance was held in the Hall of Unity. Representatives from all major species gathered. Flags of many worlds flew high. In the center, a new banner was raised, white with a circle of stars and the blue and green symbol of Earth. Elias entered wearing a clean robe, walking slowly but proudly. As he stepped forward, the crowd rose in respect. When he reached the front, Arana joined him. She held the veil spear in her hands, now dim, quiet, resting. She offered it to him. By our laws, the one who passes the spear may choose to carry it forward, she said. Will you accept this? Elias looked at the weapon, a symbol of tradition, challenge, and honor. He nodded, but instead of lifting it alone, he placed one hand on the shaft, and then looked to Arana. Together? He asked. She smiled, and so they lifted the spear side by side, not as warrior and challenger, but as allies, as equals, as proof that two worlds, so different, could find respect and unity without fear. That night, under the stars of Viewership Prime, Elias stood on a balcony looking out over the city. The lights below shimmered like waves. Ships passed overhead in calm silence. Arana joined him, holding 2 cups of warm tea made from her world's mountain flowers. They drank in silence for a while. Then Elias said, You know, I wasn't sure I would survive the trial. I wasn't sure either, Arana replied. But something in you told me you would not give up. He turned to her. What made you believe that? She thought for a moment. When I looked into your eyes, she said, I saw something. Stronger than armor, deeper than skill. I saw someone who could take the blow, not to prove he was strong, but to show he still believed. Elias looked up at the stars. We're still learning, he said. Still struggling, but we're trying. And now, Arana said, you are not alone. He smiled. For the first time in a long while, the stars didn't seem so far away. A new day began on Viewership Prime. The mountains around the city were covered in golden light. The sky was clear, and soft winds carried the sound of bells across the tall towers. But the biggest change could not be seen. It was felt. The ideal galaxy had shifted. After the final trial, after Commander Elias Vane took the spear and stood tall, humanity had been fully welcomed into the Galactic Union. The vote was clear. The respect was real. Now the future had opened wide. 2 weeks later, a special event was held in Earth's orbit. A brand new starship was ready to launch. It had been built by workers from many planets. Its frame was shaped like a silver wing, and its name was written in large glowing letters along the side. Spirit of Unity. Inside, the ship was peaceful and bright. The walls held artwork from many worlds. The control systems had human keyboards and alien voice sensors. The bridge looked out across the stars, ready to travel not for war, but for peace. Commander Elias Vane stood at the ship's viewing deck, wearing a formal uniform. His chest had healed, but a faint mark remained, a reminder of the moment that changed everything. Arana Veth stood beside him. She now served as the Union's first intercultural peacekeeper, a role never before created. You've come far, Commander, she said. We came far, Elias replied. Together. They both turned as a small group entered. Journalists, young cadets, ambassadors from many planets. One small child from a distant desert world pointed at Elias and whispered, That's him. The man who stood against the spear. Elias smiled and gave a polite wave. The moment still felt strange. He had never asked to be famous. He only wanted to be useful. Soon the launch ceremony began. A quiet voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Today, the Spirit of Unity begins its first journey. To carry hope where fear still lives, and to carry understanding where silence once ruled. Elias and Arana stepped to the ship's center panel. Together they placed their hands on a crystal pad. A soft blue light spread across the walls. The engines hummed to life. The ship rose slowly into the stars, and a new mission began. Their first stop was a quiet planet called Sirella 4. For many years, its people had stayed separate from the Union. They feared outsiders, believing that peace could not exist between different worlds. But when Elias and Arana arrived, not with weapons but with stories, everything changed. Elias stood in a large meeting hall and told the story of the trial of stars. He explained how he had stood unarmed before the spear, how he had fallen afterward, but not in shame. He said, "We don't grow by avoiding pain. We grow by choosing to rise after it, and we do that best when we rise together." The elders of Sirella 4 listened. Then they stood. Then they clapped, and, for the first time, they agreed to join the Union. Hope was spreading. As the months passed, the spirit of unity became more than a ship. It became a symbol. In places where two species had argued for years, it brought peace. In broken space stations where help was slow, it brought supplies and care. In dark corners where fear lived, it brought light. And wherever the ship went, people asked to see the man who had taken the spear, and the warrior who gave it. Together, Elias and Arana told their story over and over. But each time they added something new, a lesson learned, a question asked, a dream shared. They became more than leaders. They became teachers, and people listened. One evening, as the ship floated near a golden nebula, Elias stood alone at the observation window. The stars shined brightly. They looked peaceful from this distance, not like battles or problems or politics, just light. Arana joined him, holding 2 cups of tea. "You never stop looking at the stars," she said. "They remind me of home," Elias replied. "Earth?" He shook his head. "No. The idea of home. Not a place, but people. A feeling." She nodded. "I think I understand that now." They drank their tea quietly. Then Elias asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I fell?" "You mean during the trial?" "Yes, if I couldn't stand." Arana looked at him thoughtfully. "Maybe you would have fallen. Maybe they would have voted no. But even if they did, I think I still would have believed in you." "Why?" "Because you didn't stand out of pride," she said. "You stood for something bigger. And that kind of strength doesn't need to win every time. It just needs to keep going." Elias smiled. "That's something we believe too." Years passed. The galaxy grew closer. More planets joined the Union. Conflicts became fewer. Differences still existed, but people learned how to listen first, not fight. The trial of stars was never done again, not because it was banned, but because no one else needed to prove what Elias had already shown, that even the most fragile seeming spirit could be unbreakable when guided by hope, honesty, and courage. Elias Vane never called himself a hero. He never gave long speeches. He never raised his voice. But everywhere he went, people saw him and remembered what he had done. They remembered that he had once stood before a spear, not to fight, but to trust. And that made all the difference. One day long in the future, a child on a learning ship asked their teacher a question. "Is it true? Did a human really stand in front of a spear?" The teacher smiled. She showed the class a small, glowing book. It was titled, "The Man Who Stood Tall," and inside was the story, not just of one man, but of one moment when humanity proved its spirit could not be broken.